What is the difference between mental health and neurodivergence?
Neurodevelopmental is the way the brain works, the way you process information is a structural, if you want, thing. Mental health needs is a completely different ballgame. We tend to over-diagnose mental health difficulties.
And when you say mental health difficulties, you mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, anxiety, depression.
Yeah, anxiety, depression, mood disorders. That goes from bipolar disorder to dystemic personality disorders. The whole kind of mental health diagnosis handbook. It's completely different. You have lots of neurodivergent brains. That I like to call them brains that don't have any mental health needs. And that's nothing wrong with that. The same way you have neurotypical with and without mental health difficulties.
But, correct me if I'm wrong, you have mental health aspects that can come from neurodivergence.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, later diagnoses are strongly associated with high rate of mental health difficulties, anxiety and depression. So it's very prevalent in women late diagnosed with ADHD being wrongly diagnosed with depression.
Okay.
And the reason being is because of the masking and social expectations. So these are women that have been called lazy. They feel they are not good enough. And then they go to seek medical advice, and you are depressed because you have low mood, you don't have energy, you are not eating properly, you are off work, and so forth. But actually, sometimes it's just an ADHD burnout, is ADHD non-diagnostic that is the cause of these responses.
Wow.
Yes. And they've been through years of medication that is not working.
For depression.
That is not working. And I have lots of women coming on 30, 40s, and they are neurodivergent. So, that feeling of something is wrong with me and I don't know what it is. Childhood years, yeah, when you start to pick up the society rules and how things work. So, why? But, you are doing well at school. You are not a troublemaker. You are not been causing any problems at home. And then go through life, social expectations, always with that kind of negative self-belief. I'm not good enough. Why is it so hard for me compared with everyone else? So that builds, obviously, the combination to develop depression, low self-esteem, sleep disturbance, poor appetite, and you are off work regularly because you are always tired. But it's not depression. You are just non-diagnosed with ADHD. Lazy, you are lazy. That's a very strong one, very common. Not good enough, you lazy. And that builds a very, very negative sense of self.
I'm trying to process what you're saying and translate it very simply so that I can understand it. Neurodivergence, you are born with, it's neurodevelopmental, right?
Yeah, in the way your brain.
Yeah. And it doesn't go away. There's no cure. You don't grow out of. I'm not going to get to 80 and be like, I'm not autistic anymore. No. I am autistic. I've been autistic since I was born, and I will be autistic till I die.
Yes.
Whereas mental health, I could go through periods of anxiety or depression. I'm not sure where bipolar sits or personality disorders.
Bipolar is under the mood disorders umbrella.
Okay.
And you can treat.
Can you see autism on a brain scan?
There are structural differences.
Differences. Okay.
And you can see beautiful brains. So and that's why I think we are developing a better understanding as well with the assessments and with the clinical presentation. And we need to start to think about coding differently things. For example, I'm very interested in functional neurological disorders, and there's high prevalence between FND and autistic brains.
And what is a functional neurological disorder?
It's fascinating. It's amazing. So FND is, for example, someone that presents like a stroke, facial drop, weakness, slur speech. But actually, we don't have a structural change in the brain. So I do a CT scan or MRI, and I can't see damaging on the brain that will cause this. Okay.
That you would typically see?
Yeah, in a stroke. Yeah.
Yes.
But the behavioral presentation, it's absolutely the same, and there are very complex, like non-epileptic seizures patients, which, so there are very complex presentation that from the outside is purely neurological presentation, but actually what happens is just the brain is hyper-focusing on the attention span.
Okay.
So you get very, very, very focused on sensory response. And then the brain reads high levels of stress, your cortisol levels go really high, that triggers an immune response and flares up in a behavior state.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very similar with ASD reading model because it's that hypervigilant mode. Yeah. So I have that attention focus is really similar and sensory overloaded. Okay. So it's they overlap a lot. There's a lot of high rate of this presentation in autistic patients. And it's fascinating because working with neurodivergent brains is really cool because you don't waffle, you don't fluff around. You see, you just explain and then it's very much cause effect. So the outcome is so great. The recovery rates, in my experience, is really amazing because you just need to explain the process. Look, this is what your brain is doing at the moment. Can you trick the brain? Can we put other strategies in place? And the recovery is happening. And usually, obviously, it's not as simple as I'm telling you. That you have the trauma, you have the stress, all the stress around. And that's what it is a stress signal. But it's really cool. And the recovery rate is really, really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's great hearing that you think neurodivergent brains are really cool. Right? So how quickly did you know that I was autistic? How obvious was it? Can you remember?
Yes, I can, because it was, you came first and then I said, you need to come again, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I came back for ADHD afterwards.
So, well, body language, all the nonverbal cues were there, and your life story, everything was making sense.
Yeah, I passed the test. I got great grades in the autism exam.